morning, everyone. Those that are present and those that are joining us hybrid. We will call the meeting to order at 3:03 p.m. This is a committee of the whole to begin our discussions on official plan. Adoption of the agenda. The recommendation is that West Elgin Committee of the Whole adopt the agenda as circulated. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Rowe and seconded by Leatham. All in favor of that? Angela, I'm not seeing you. Can you, are you not with us? Guess maybe not, but that motion does carry.
She is there. She's just not on video.
I don't even hear.
I can't get my video to come on for some reason. I'm trying to switch devices.
Okay, so she's there. Are you in favor, Angela, of that motion?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Certainly a reminder to disclose any pecuniary interest when it arises. We are now at official plan background study and report. Recommendation that West Elgin Committee of the Whole hereby receives the report from Brian Pierce, planner, regarding the new official plan background report 2021-30 for information purposes, and that West Elgin Committee of the Whole receives the new official plan background review issues and opportunities report dated September 13th, 2021, as contained with appendix 1 of this report, planning report 2021-30 for information purposes. Long resolution, but do I have a mover and seconder for it? Moved by Tellier, seconder is Rowe. All in favor of that, and that has been carried. Next item up, we have representatives from Dillon.
Oh, sir, actually, Brian's going to make a bit of a presentation at this point.
Okay, Brian, we will turn the floor over to you, and then we will officially welcome our guests from Dillon.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Committee of the Whole. With regards to the new official plan project, we've been working at this through most of 2021 in efforts to get to the end of phase 1 of the project at this stage. So Dillon's consulting team has been working steadily at getting this project up to capacity and through the process. And we've got to the final stages of the background study, which is before you today. And we have members of the Dillon consulting team with us today, as well as Watson Associates. So with that, they do have a presentation laid out for you that was appended to your council package. And if I could turn it over to Kelly Martel. She's the project manager on this project with Dillon, and she can introduce her team and introductions accordingly.
Thank you so much, Brian. I'm going to share my screen now, if that's okay. And if someone can let me know whether or not they can see it, we can proceed from there. And what I would do at that stage is hand it over to Patty Kennedy to give us a bit of an introduction. So I will share now.
We can see it, Kelly.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. All right, Patty.
Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the committee. There is quite a probably meaty agenda package before you with the findings from our background report. So we're going to give you a bit of a high-level overview of some of the relevant key findings from our background report. And this presentation includes a couple of just general discussion questions at the back end to sort of get you thinking a little bit about you know, some of the things we need to focus in on in terms of what the areas of priority should be moving forward for the new official plan project. Okay, I want to go to the next slide here, and I will just speak very briefly to the agenda. So I'm Patty Kennedy. I'm a planner and partner with Dillon Consulting. I'm joined by Kelly Martell, who's the project manager and senior planner with Dillon. Also from Dillon is another planner, Zoe Sotarakos. Zoe's going to speak to you a little later on some of the policy themes. And also joined with us today is Eric Carbonen, who's a professional land economist with Watson and Associates. And Eric's going to talk a bit about some of the land implications and employment and population and growth trends related to the West Elgin OP review. So in general, we're going to cover the OP process. We're going to talk a bit about the background work we've completed to date. We're going to try and zero in on some of the key issues that we see shaping the official plan process. Ultimately, though, our work is heavily informed by the feedback and directions that we get from the public and from council. So this is our first chance, really. We've been kind of beavering away in the background, using a lot of statistical analysis, desktop reviews, looking at trends, but we really like to marry that work with what we hear from council and from the public. So those are sort of part of what we're going to get at today. And then Kelly will walk us through some of the wrap up and next steps for the OP process. So without further ado, I will hand the baton back to Kelly to walk you through the process component.
Great. Thank you so much, Patty. So what I wanted to do first before we get into the results of our background review was review the official plan process and context. And so what I'm showing here on this slide is that in terms of the requirements and processes for an official plan, there are a number of legislative, policy, and regulatory documents that guide land use planning in Ontario. And the local official plan is somewhere in the middle. It takes direction from the Planning Act and the provincial policy statement, as well as the county official plan. And it applies and implements those broad brush directions that are more appropriate for a localized context. And the official plan then gets translated down into other elements of Planning Act processes in terms of the zoning bylaw, as well as through processes such as land division, site plan control, and minor variances. And really this sets out the framework for development in a community. In terms of context, provincial legislation does require that municipalities review, update, and/or prepare new official plans at regular intervals. The last time West Elgin did this was between 2008 and 2011, when the official plan that is in force today was adopted and ultimately approved by the municipal board. And what I would say is that there have been a number of changes since the last iteration of the municipality's official plan, both with the Planning Act having a number of new bills set out. The provincial policy statement has been updated twice now, once in 2014 and then again in 2020. And we do know that Elgin County is currently updating their official plan as well. All this to say, it is certainly now time for the municipality to re-examine the official plan and the policies set out therein to establish a framework for the next 25 years. As I had mentioned previously, the purpose of an official plan is to guide land use changes. It also acts as a tool and vehicle to provide development certainty, attract investment to a community, balance growth and change with the protection of resources and the natural environment and the rich agricultural features of a community, as well as guide infrastructure decisions and investment. And as I've noted, given that we do need to review and relook at these policies on regular intervals, the official plan is not intended to be a static document. There is expected to be change over time to respond to those evolving conditions. So with things are where they are at today, The current municipal official plan, which as I said, was approved in 2008 and adopted in 2011, other way around. Adopted in 2008, approved in 2011. It is based on the 2005 provincial policy statement and was intended to go out to a 2026 planning horizon. And the focus of development as set out in the policy framework of the current official plan really is focused on ensuring the residential development and employment development occur primarily in the settlement areas of Rodney and West Lorne, where there are full municipal services, with some additional growth permitted in the hamlet areas, but based on provincial and county direction, really the focus of growth is those higher level settlement areas. And with that, we, as Brian noted, Dillon and Watson were retained in early 2021 to take a look at the current official plan and set out an approach to deliver a new official plan. And what we did was establish a 4-phase process under which to conduct this work. Phase 1 really we're marking the conclusion of phase 1 today and starting now this discussion on phase 2. Phase 1 was primarily the background review and analysis. It took a look at where things are on the ground today and what we might need to do to set the municipality up for success in the future. From that, we are going to develop some policy directions through guidance from both council, the technical committee, which is comprised of members of staff, as well as stakeholders and members of the public through the official plan. Through the phase 2 work, we would be developing policy directions, which would form the basis for the draft new official plan. And finally, the finalization of the official plan. And we do intend on meeting with council, stakeholders, and engaging with the public at key times throughout this process. So while this is the first time you may be seeing us, it certainly will not be the last throughout this process. And with respect to the background review, before I hand it over to Eric, I did want to note a couple of things. So in order to understand the baseline conditions and ground future work, we did complete a robust background review issues and opportunities report, which is included in your council agenda package. And we will walk you through some of the key findings, as Patty said, in the presentation today. And I guess before I hand it off to Eric, I would just note that a lot of the background growth analysis piece in particular is focused on this existing urban development context being your primary settlement areas. And a lot of the work that we did is based on that. So when we're talking about the growth forecast and growth projections, which Eric will get to in just a moment, that's where our attention has been focused. And so with that, I will pass it over to Eric, who's going to provide an overview of what we did to determine the growth needs. And so I will mute myself and give it over to Eric.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Hopefully everybody can hear me.
We are.
Okay, excellent. I was having some microphone troubles earlier. So I'm Eric Karvonen with Watson and Associates. Happy to be here today. As Kelly had mentioned, I was part of the team from Watson, retained to look at the growth trends and projections for the municipality over the longer term period. So preparing growth projections that really look at population, housing, and employment potential for the municipality through the year 2046. This was all part of the OP review, and ultimately is necessary to really understand, growth management and ultimately preparing a land needs assessment for the municipality, which we'll speak to later in the presentation. So the growth projections themselves, consider a broad range of themes and trends related to demographics, economic considerations, as well as socioeconomic factors to understand how future population and employment growth is expected to change with time in the municipality. And part of it is really looking at this within the context not only of historical and anticipated future trends, but also West Elgin's role within the broader regional economy and the growth prospects for that broader area, including the county, as well as southwestern Ontario more generally. The municipal-wide population forecast that we prepared is based on a cohort survival methodology using accepted practices in this regard. It considers a natural increase related to births and deaths in the municipality, as well as factors in net migration patterns that we anticipate over that 25-year time period. With respect to the housing outlook, it's been generated by major age group using a headship rate forecast. So essentially, we translate or convert the population forecast by age category into housing units based on primary maintainer estimates. Then we've also looked at employment and the prospects for employment growth in the municipality. And this is really divided into two general categories. One is the population growth itself will drive population-related employment growth. So this is largely related to commercial and institutional sectors that basically are there to serve the population locally. And then we have what we call export-based sectors and potential employment growth in industrial and primary sectors. And again, that's been looked at in the local context. And the growth in this area is influenced more broadly by market conditions and competitiveness and general attributes related to transportation, access to labor, employment markets, those types of considerations to identify employment growth by sector in this category for that 25-year time period. Next slide, please. So this slide here provides an overview of our baseline conditions for the municipality in 2021 and our growth projections out 25 years to 2046. And so you can see from the left side of the slide that we've identified that currently the municipality has a population base of just over 5,100 people. This is anticipated to grow to about 5,700 by 2031 and gradually increase from there to 6,500 people by 2046, representing an average annual growth rate about 1%, which is higher than what the municipality has historically achieved. We see fairly strong net migration to the municipality, particularly in the first 10 years, driven largely by the 55 plus age category, as well as working age population growth potential. On the employment side, we see growth of about 800 jobs over that 25-year time period, with the employment base of the municipality increasing from about 2,200 jobs to about 3,000 jobs by 2046, representing about a 1.4% annual average growth rate, equal to about 35 jobs of growth per year over that time period. With respect to housing, the municipality has just under 2,200 households in 2021. We expect that to increase to just under 3,000 households by 2046. This represents growth of about 770 new units over that 25-year period, or averaging about 31 new units per year over that time period. A large majority of these housing units are expected to be low-density, single semi-detached units, but over time we do see a greater share of higher density units being accommodated in this mix of housing. Next slide. As part of the analysis, we also undertook a non-residential land supply assessment to understand the opportunities to accommodate future employment growth in the municipality over that 25-year period. That included doing an assessment of your employment land supply within Rodney and West Lorne, which we've identified as your urban employment land supply. So essentially, the employment lands represent lands that are designated for industrial category. In total, we identified an employment land base of about 74 gross hectares. Of this, we identified about 21 hectares being vacant. Next slide, please. We completed a similar exercise to understand your commercial land supply inventory. So this would include lands that are designated for commercial, as well as the downtown core designation. In total, we identified 17 gross hectares of land with the commercial category, again, located in Rodney and West Lorne, of which only about 3 hectares are vacant in terms of status. Next slide. So circling back on employment land needs, we recognize, that over the forecast period, the municipality will see, fairly moderate to strong employment growth across a wide range of sectors. Having said that, we do anticipate that about 35% of the employment growth is anticipated to be accommodated within employment lands. This generates an employment land demand on a net hectare basis of about 28 hectares over that 25-year period. Using the earlier analysis of employment land supply, we've identified that 21 gross hectares represents about 18 net hectares on a net basis in terms of supply opportunities. And so adjusting that net land supply for a vacancy adjustment of 15%, which basically reflects lands that are likely not going to develop over the forecast period, we've identified a shortfall of employment land for that 25-year period of about 13 net hectares, which on a gross basis is about 16 hectares of land. So basically, our analysis suggests that West Elgin has a shortage of employment land to accommodate the forecast. As such, it would require about 16 gross hectares or 40 gross acres of additional urban employment land to be designated by 2046 to accommodate the forecast that we've identified. Next slide, please. As part of the non-residential land needs assessment, we also considered commercial and institutional land needs in the municipality. There are moderate retail space needs to accommodate future employment in the sector over the 25-year period. This is, again, largely going to be driven by the population growth identified. We've identified a need for about 44,000 square feet of additional retail space over the 25-year period. As such, we have identified a small deficit of vacant designated commercial land in West Elgin, totaling about 1 hectare being the deficit. One qualifier in that, we do see that there are limited opportunities currently for commercial development in gateway locations within the urban settlement areas that we looked at. Most of the vacant lands or sites that are available are in the downtown cores, and we do see there being opportunity to provide for additional opportunities to accommodate growth in these gateway locations. On the institutional land needs, the needs are fairly modest over the forecast period. We did, however, identify a small deficit for institutional lands as well to meet the forecast demand of just under 1 hectare deficit over the time period. Next slide, please. So circling back again on the employment lands assessment and the deficit of 16 gross hectares, which I currently spoke to, there is a need, of course, to look at location options for future employment land expansion areas in the municipality. We have not gone into any great analysis of this. However, we do want to provide some context to this discussion moving forward. Essentially, any expansion area to accommodate new employment lands should have regard for locations that have good access to regional transportation networks, offer physical connectivity of the new proposed employment area to existing employment lands to create more contiguous employment areas. The whole idea of having a critical mass is important in this regard. The site itself should be relatively flat in terms of topography with minimal environmental issues or impacts. Obviously, there should be access to transportation networks to provide for efficient and effective vehicle traffic and access and circulation, particularly locations that work for heavy truck traffic, because we do see opportunities in that sector in transportation and warehousing. And also, there needs to be consideration for buffering of those lands against neighboring residential and non-residential areas to minimize land use incompatibility concerns. Next slide, please. And I now hand it back over to Kelly.
Thanks so much, Eric. Before I start, my understanding is there are a number of questions coming in around what we've discussed thus far. And I'm certainly happy to open the floor to those discussion questions now while this information is fresh in our mind. But I would like to be cognizant of the total time allotted for this session, which is 2 hours. So perhaps what we do is a quick 5 to 7 minute Q&A on what we've heard to this far. Then I can pick it up and we can do the same thing for the land supply analysis portion. And then we can, again, if there is a need after Zoe's done the policy analysis, to open it up to questions. And that should give us enough time to have the more robust workshop discussion questions at the end as well. So I'm happy to do it that way. I would turn it over to the clerk in terms of process for moving that forward.
That works for us. If anyone has any questions, I believe Councillor Rowe, you were ready to start, so I'll let you go first, and then anyone else just raise your hand.
I guess that's all of it.
Through the chair?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to get can you put their faces up so I'm not talking to or is that difficult?
Can you stop the share? Kelly, if you could stop the share, that would be easier. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just interested in how you come to the decision about the regional effect on our municipality. So I understand that you look at data, obviously, but are you knowledgeable about specific developments that are happening in our region that could impact us? Not sure who's to answer that.
I'm thinking it probably is best for me to respond. Yes, we certainly are. We as a firm do a significant amount of work in neighboring municipalities, both at the county level and also in area municipalities. And so we're very familiar with, many of the municipalities in the surrounding market area, including Chatham-Kent, City of London, some of the upper tier counties in the area. This is always a very important part of any growth assessment, is to really look at your municipality within the context of that broader regional market, because no municipality is an island. It doesn't operate as such from a growth perspective. It's obviously interconnected economically to other locations. So, for example, when we're looking at broader growth pressures related to net migration, much of the narrative needs to be to understand where and who these people are in terms of who would be moving to your municipality and where they're coming from and the reasons for that. So much of it has to do with looking at demographic drivers, for example, looking at the 55 plus and the aging baby boom generation and who will drive much of the demand for housing for empty nesters and the appeal of West Elgin for that market specifically. For the younger working age population, much of the narrative is focusing on you know, the affordability of housing in your municipality and the ability to accommodate families and households who may have economic opportunities not only locally but also within commuting distance of other municipalities such as London or Chatham. So these are important aspects to consider. And when identifying the growth rates for population and housing, we do very much rely on broader county level and broader regional forecasts provided from the Ministry of Finance and from other studies to help inform and validate the growth rates that we've identified for your municipality, you know, for the 25-year period. And similar for employment, certainly, you know, we do look at market opportunities within broader export-based sectors and look at your sort of position competitively against other locations to help understand, you know, the growth prospects in those sectors. And again, in more population-related employment sectors, those are again very much driven by the population and housing growth that we've identified in the first part of the assessment.
Just a follow up to that through the chair. So I'm thinking of developments like large Amazon distribution plants and things like that. Are you expecting that will have an impact on us down here in West Elgin?
Well, not specifically Amazon. I can't comment on that. We do know that there is significant growth pressure at the moment in terms of goods movement related growth opportunities in e-commerce and those types of retailers, and of course all the logistics related services that support that type of e-commerce activity. And certainly we have seen significant growth in other areas of southwestern Ontario outside of the Greater Toronto area, and certainly the trend is to have fulfillment centers that are closer to customer to the markets, not necessarily to all be central located within the GTA, for example. So we definitely do see more market opportunities moving forward in e-commerce, and there certainly is one possibility for growth.
Richard, go ahead.
I believe you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I look at our working population, and it's really not anything like what we need at the very moment for our commercial businesses. You know, we got one factory in particular that's having to migrate workers in so they can carry on operating. You know, so they're fitting houses up with more bedrooms, trying to accommodate these people because there is nowhere empty for them to live in. So they're bringing migrate workers in like the large farmers do to run our factories, which we can't get local workers. So if anybody comes and puts new commercial buildings up and hopefully get workers in there, that it just won't, it isn't going to work. We've got to keep the houses up to get the population to suit the commercial trend that we've got. And our commercial trend is just starting to take off. We've got 3 factories that are already in a growth permission, condition. and they are getting larger, and they do want workers, and they can't fill them. This one particular factory is trying to sort its own problem out by bringing migrant workers in. I don't know whether that's the right thing or not, and how permanent it's going to be. But I mean, what a shame when you've got somebody that really wants to expand their business and they can't get people to work in it. You know, that's the problem as I see. And we've really got to get the houses going almost before the factories start coming. Thank you.
Right. Did you have a question for me as well, or was that just more of a comment?
It's a comment before we start encouraging factories to come. That'll have no workers. That we have a problem there.
Right. Well, you certainly raise a very good point. This is an ongoing issue currently, and especially in our COVID-19 environment. There's labor shortages in a number of sectors right across the province, and certainly manufacturing and skilled labor shortages is definitely quite prevalent in many municipalities. And so certainly I share your concerns in that area. And it certainly does speak to the need for greater market choice in housing. Obviously, the ability for the municipality to attract working age population to your municipality is important. You have an aging labor force, and that's going to continue. And so there needs to be obviously initiatives to help bring in a broader sort of a working age population to offset that aging component. One component that does work in your favor is you are within commuting distance of some larger markets, such as London and Chatham-Kent. And so you can potentially at least draw to some degree from a broader regional labor force pool, which may help some of the challenges in this regard. But certainly your comment is certainly very relevant at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I guess I'll come up here next. You know, when your planning policy approach, just a question for our consultants. Do you put West Elgin under the same lens as you put Southwold Township, possibly Thames Centre? You mentioned Chatham-Kent, a lot of these other areas around us. Are we put and viewed through the same lens as any other municipality in southwestern Ontario? Is that the basis for your, our first conversation today?
Through you, perhaps I'll start, Eric, and you can come in, and because there are some nuances. So, I mean, from big picture policy perspective, the province provides the direction, and then you try to apply it locally, of course, and pick up. And our goal is to pick up all the local nuances that make a plan special or unique, because each area has different challenges. You're going to have different priorities, and ultimately, you get to have the strategy that suits your needs. That's like big picture. Eric would probably speak to the economic analysis that he's done and be able to maybe answer what nuances or differences. But I think, as he was trying to mention, he still looks at like the big picture regional area and then applies it at a more local lens. Eric, did you want to elaborate a little bit on your methodology or your approach?
Yeah, I can add a few more words. I mean, I think Patty sort of mentioned the fact that, we do need to look at West Elgin very much in that broader regional context. And, many municipalities in southwestern Ontario, whether it be, central Elgin or Southwold, there's a lot of similarities in terms of, the geographic location and even some of the assets related to transportation access and those sorts of features. But then, of course, there are local characteristics that we want to make sure that we understand as it relates to your employment and your housing base. And of course, you have certain attributes related to your, shoreline with Lake Erie, and sort of other attributes of that nature that, you know, we also take in regard. So I think from a very broad basis, you know, a lot of the growth potential on the population and housing side is very much regionally driven. But obviously there's opportunities at a local level to deviate from that. And a lot of it has to do with, you know, the next phase of work related to the planning and the policies that are established to help manage and facilitate, you know, growth and development moving forward, and to provide for the conditions necessary to be able to capitalize on the opportunities that are identified.
Well, that was just one of my concerns as you were going through our land inventory and whatnot. I noticed that it was based strictly on the existing settlement areas that we have within the municipality. There was no inclusion of any of the existing industrial and commercial properties that we have outside of those settlement areas. And again, there was, and I know it's very early days, there certainly was no looking at the 401 corridor that runs right through our whole municipality. And if you look up and down the 401 between here and Toronto, it seems that there's a tremendous amount of growth that's coming right off of that arterial road. So I suppose as we move forward through this process, that there will be more focus put on that. Have you taken into consideration when you say available lands and the numbers that you have put up there for us? Does that also include those lands that are available outside of the settlement area?
Within the urban employment land needs assessment and supply inventory work, those lands were not considered. So that deficit that's been identified is only focusing on the urban employment land supply and need identified, or demand potential within Rodney and West Lorne in terms of within the settlement areas. We do recognize obviously that, you know, one of the next steps would be to consider you know, where an expansion area could be located. Through the preliminary assessment, when we were identifying urban employment land demand itself, as far as employment being accommodated within those two settlement areas or within an urban context, there was a provision made or an acknowledgement that a certain share of industrial employment would be accommodated within those rural employment lands that you spoke of earlier. So they have been considered in that context, but not directly in the urban employment land needs assessment itself.
Any other questions? Yes, Bonnie.
Just a clarification with regard to how you decide on the vacant commercial and employment lands. Do you look at vacant buildings within the commercial areas of our two villages? Is that added into that percentage?
It's not specifically in the land supply itself. The land supply is strictly focusing on vacant sites, like in terms of land parcels. If there's vacant building space, we didn't have access to those sorts of metrics or information. There is, however, a provision made for the employment lands assessment to include a 10% provision for intensification that does get factored into that analysis. But as far as looking at the actual vacant building space itself and its ability to be utilized, no, there has not been any specific assessment of that.
So then through the chair, we're looking at and I understand the attractiveness of gateway locations for, you know, commercial use, but then of course we're looking at downtown revitalization and whether we're encouraging that or discouraging it. So that would be my concern with not actually looking at, and we do have a number of vacant storefronts and commercial options in our villages. And that's something that we would like to address. Whether we can address it in the official plan or not is the question.
Okay. Just one other question on the some of the vacant lands. Do you do deep enough dive to understand that yes, those lands have been vacant. They've been vacant for many, many years. Usually there's a reason why they have been left vacant, quite possibly because they are wet and very difficult to drain, and certainly with all the obstacles quite often are probably be the last areas that an individual would want to attempt to develop. Do you dive down that deep to find out, yes, the land is there, but is it developable?
There has not been a site-by-site assessment of that detail to sort of understand those types of issues or concerns. We do, however, have a vacancy adjustment factored into the land needs assessment. So there's a recognition that not all of the land supply identified will be developed over the forecast period. And so a downward adjustment is made to the land supply to reflect that. As well, all parcels that are larger, that are identified on a gross basis, are netted down for sort of non-developable features, whether they be sort of provisions for swim ponds or internal roadways or other sort of non-developable features where there's a 20% takeout to account for that. But again, it's a very high level calculation, but there is obviously an acknowledgement of these types of nuances with respect to developable sites.
Okay, Angela.
You mentioned a vacancy adjustments calculation. So what percentage are you adjusting for so that council understands that?
So there's a 15% vacancy adjustment applied to the net developable land supply. So essentially take the gross vacant land, then we have a 20% downward adjustment for larger unsubdivided parcels to get a net hectare land supply total, and then from there we adjust downward another 15% off the total amount to come up with a net supply with that 15% vacancy adjustment.
Okay, do you want to move on to your next component?
Yes, thank you so much. I will begin the screen share again, and what we will do at this stage is now talk about the residential land supply analysis. So on the residential side, the analysis was focused on understanding supply and demand in relation to that projected future growth that Eric had identified earlier on, being that 770 new residential units, with the intent and objective to understand whether there would be enough urban land to allow for the appropriate quantum of residential units, or whether there would need to be an expansion. And so as part of this work, there's 5 steps essentially, which I've identified on this slide. The first 2 steps deal with identifying the residential supply. That includes everything that we are aware of in the development pipeline, as well as the vacant land and settlement areas that is designated for urban residential development purposes. And through that, what we do is we take the supply and test it under the demand scenarios to understand implications. So as I noted, we know that we need to accommodate 770 new units between 2021 to 2046. The scenarios would be informed by historic trends, municipal servicing, and other factors. And if there is a shortage of residential land, meaning that we have fewer than 770 units in the potential, then we would need to explore through the official plan expansion of the settlement areas to accommodate the residential demand. If conversely, on the other hand, we end up with a number that is more than that 770 units, we would identify that there is a sufficient supply of land within the settlement areas, but there may or may not be opportunity to explore whether or not that those locations are in the right place. And there is opportunity through the OP, if expansion is not determined to be appropriate, that we could examine rationalization of settlement area boundaries or land swaps to accommodate the demand. But what I did want to, that's a brief overview of the process for determining the land supply and demand. But what I think we're interested in is noting here that, again, what we did is we looked at the urban settlement areas of Rodney and West Lorne. Provincial policy and county policy requires growth be directed to settlement areas on full municipal services. So that is where the focus of the analysis was. But we did as well look at hamlets. We do know hamlets can provide opportunities for residential growth at a smaller scale. What we're showing here on this screen is both the land supply in Rodney and West Lorne. And I believe that what we're showing in the purple and the orange and the yellow are vacant parcels, whereas anything that is outlined in purple would be captured under that development pipeline. So they're not vacant, but we do know they're going to develop in the future because there are active applications in some stage of approval. And then again, as I said, we did look at the hamlets just to identify the quantum of vacant land and assign a number in terms of the residential yield for hamlets, understanding they do not take the same precedence or priority for development as the settlement areas do. And those are all identified in yellow on this slide. And we again did look at Port Glasgow, and we do know that there are a number of active development applications there, which were factored into the supply analysis. In total, what we did find was that the pipeline data indicates approximately 278 units that are in some stage of the approvals process, where these are predominantly located in West Lorne at the specific moment in time. In terms of the vacant land potential, what we found was that there is potential for an additional 592 units on the vacant lands, which are predominantly located in Rodney. So this slide is showing the unit mix that we have assigned through the analysis in both Rodney, West Lorne, and the hamlets. In total of the 592 units, we anticipate that 505 of them would be single or semi-detached. 29 of them would be townhouses or other forms of ground-oriented multiple residential units. And 58 of them would be apartments. And in total, when we take the supply, being the pipeline and the vacant land, we have 870 units that could be accommodated within the existing settlement area boundaries. And as Eric mentioned, and as I noted previously, we know that the demand side to 2046 is 770 units. So ultimately, the potential supply exceeds the demand. And as a result, we do not anticipate a need to expand the existing settlement area boundaries. However, we do need to consider in the next stage of work whether that supply is located in the right area. Do we need to look at adjusting boundaries through a land swap or other process, or are the existing boundaries and the existing vacant parcels and pipeline data appropriately located to accommodate growth to 2046? And that, I think, is the residential land supply analysis key findings. And what I am happy to do again at this stage is stop sharing my screen and open for quick questions before I pass it over to Zoe, who will talk about the policy audit themes. So I will do this now.
Okay, I'm gonna start up. I guess I've been involved in municipal politics since 1988 in this municipality. You're telling me that we have 800 and some odd vacant or potential residential sites in our settlement area is something that I'm going to have to work with somebody somewhere to actually do a deep dive and actually show me where those sites are, because right now, let me put it, I'm not buying 800 and some odd potential sites, because somebody I hope can prove me wrong that yes, they are there. And certainly if you're counting the ones that are potential future residential that are beside the sewage lagoon, I don't think that that really makes for good data. So we do have a lot of work to do to put some context into what is and what is not in this whole process before we start to move forward. Question? Yeah. Any comment on that?
Yeah, I'll provide a quick response. So like I said, we absolutely, like, one of the issues with analysis like this is you take the designation and the permissions that are afforded to land in the official plan in an urban area, you apply factors for density, and you estimate theoretical potential. And what we often find is you rub up very quickly against theoretical potential. It sometimes doesn't actually line up with the real potential. And so there is some ground truthing and some examination required on the properties that were considered. They have the permission to develop, but maybe practically, for things like nearby land use constraints, they may not. And for those reasons, you've got to maybe update the supply calculation, and then you get a different conclusion. But there is a process that we have to go through between now and the draft in the OP to ground truth the supply analysis, both on the employment side and the res side. So that look forward. I don't know, Brian, if that's something that happens sort of as a desktop analysis behind the scenes before we get together next, or the public process allows for that. There's a couple of different ways,
Bonnie?
It's a bit of a follow-up from the mayor's question, and I guess I'm referring to slide. I'm not sure which slide it is. It's on page 192 of the full presentation. It's the summary of the development pipeline. And so the first part of the question is, and yes, I've only been on council for 3 years, but a couple of these, I had no idea that they were even under development. So I am questioning how old these development stages are. So I guess maybe that's something that Brian would be able to answer. And the second part of the question is, I'm wondering why the lakeshore development of Seaside and Lighthouse aren't within this mix of being in the development pipeline?
Sure, I can start out with that then. So the pipeline has a varying mix of statuses, as you can see in this third column there. The first one is referencing a draft plan approval on a 1989 draft plan in south end of West Lorne. It's actually moving forward through detailed engineering design now to progress forward for finalizing the conditions of approval to head towards registration is the end game, obviously, for lots to be created. So that one's actually active into the process again, which is good to see on an existing.
Sorry, just to clarify, there was a big noise outside and I didn't hear. Are we referring to the one that's listed as 67 units?
Yeah, exactly. 67
Okay,
units. That's currently on, that's Todd Place Phase 2, if that helps you out for context. Okay. The new name is going to be Creek's Edge. Anyways, so that one's moving through engineering design right now. The second one on the list is referencing a concept proposal that's been going through some due diligence process as part of a land acquisition and have done pre-application consultation with the municipality as well as the county on the proposed draft plan. So the units might be refined as part of the submission requirements when it gets submitted, but it's actively being looked at. So it's in the pipeline. And same with the third one on the list there, that's a townhouse concept that's being discussed preliminarily right now to move forward with. And then the third one, or the fourth one is in Rodney. And that is actually the former Legion proposal that is being converted, and they're in an active pre-application consultation process that we should be receiving their applications when they're ready to submit. So that's how we analyze that. And with regards to Port Glasgow, those are shown on your screen now. And those are current draft plan approvals for a block plan process with Seaside. And then you got the condominium development for the 9 units of Lighthouse shown on that. So did you have additional questions or any of my
I just wondered why they weren't included in the mix of the total number of housing that was potentially being developed.
Right. So if we're looking at the mapping, we're looking at our settlement areas of Rodney and West Lorne as part of the process. So those are outside of those settlement areas. Any of the consulting team want to add any other additional points?
No, I think, Brian, you covered it accurately. In terms of how we approach the land supply analysis, you're absolutely correct. We did focus primarily on Rodney and West Lorne, as that is where we know the majority of growth should be directed and is directed. However, we do know and acknowledge that there is significant growth in Port Glasgow. If we were to incorporate that as part of the overall analysis, it would then bring you up to about 980 units, as opposed to bring you down closer to that 770. That would be the effect. But given the focus and the primacy in terms of your hierarchy of development areas, the settlement areas are the focus and should be. I'm not sure if there are any other further questions or if we want to move on in the presentation to the next stage. And we do have opportunity for a bigger discussion once we have reviewed the policy audit. So if there are no questions
just one question. when you're going through this inventory, do you take into consideration any of these vacant lands and the decades of time that has passed since they have been available to be developed, and nothing has happened to this point in time? I know we talk about the Port Glasgow developments. That's been going on for 12 or 13 years without development. So I think as we go through this official plan, not just in the fact that we have a land inventory of potential development areas, I think that we really need to focus on the fact that we need to have development lands that are attractive to developers to develop, and not just sit in inventory decade after decade after decade.
That's a great comment, Chair. That is part of our process, is to examine the residential land supply and where it's located. Is it in the right spot? Is it helping facilitating future development, or is there a need to necessitate a land swap that we were talking about earlier in this presentation? So the thought process is this is the background stage. We look at what we have existing, designated existing, and then get into that process. So that's indeed one of the factors that we'll be looking at. So.
Okay, you want to continue on?
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Great question. So in terms of, there we go. What we did next as part of the background work is we conducted a policy audit to understand where gaps exist in your current official plan, where there are opportunities to move forward, and how we can advance this into developing a new official plan for the municipality up to the 2046 time horizon. And I will say what we did find, and what Zoe will elaborate on, is that there are no major policy gaps, but there are a number of areas and opportunities where we can improve upon what is existing today and bring forward some policies that would align better with the provincial policy direction, which has changed over time, as well as the county policies. And what we did is we considered these in a number of theme areas in terms of our policy approach, being growth management, agriculture, cultural heritage, natural heritage systems, environmental conservation and source water protection, climate change, housing, and engagement and consultation. And what I would ask council to do, as Zoe is describing our findings of the policy audit, is think about what the key concerns are from a local lens related to each of these topics. Are you hearing anything from your constituents that we would benefit from understanding more before we move forward into developing the new official plan? And what you foresee as local councillors on the ground every day as being future concerns. And if we can start to think about that, that's where we'll guide the next stage of our discussion once Zoe's done her presentation on the policy audit. So without any further ado, I will pass it over to Zoe, and she will elaborate on our policy findings.
Thank you, Kelly. So we'll start on the first subject area, which is growth management. So we reviewed the hierarchy of settlement areas in the background report and completed the land supply analysis that Kelly walked us through earlier. And this is to focus on the policy audit, where it showed us opportunities for growth accommodation within those urban areas. The PPS requires that municipalities have policies to ensure that there's a range and mix of housing types to accommodate current and future residents' needs. through the work that Eric presented and Watson's analysis, there's projected for 80 apartment units. And we recognize the historic built form has typically been low density residential. So we look to the new OP to include some new policies that will provide direction to facilitate development of some higher density dwellings at those appropriate locations. So we'll go into the next theme area, which is agriculture. So in agriculture, there's opportunity for the new official plan to provide clear and robust policy on-farm diversified uses, leveraging the province's guidance and other best practices seen in surrounding municipalities and effective policies. In the municipality settlement areas, we are expected to see continued growth over time, and there's an opportunity to explore policies which would minimize potential for land use compatibility issues that might emerge from the agricultural and residential uses on those edge areas. And we recommend that the official plan would include policy guidance for new development, which proactively manages that rural and urban interface. So we'll go to the next theme area, which is cultural heritage. So based on the 2020 PPS, the new OP is to include the process and criteria that's outlined for determining cultural heritage value and interest when assessing the overall cultural heritage inventory in the municipality. And the OP will take direction from the PPS on engaging and involving Indigenous communities in all land use planning matters and including matters of heritage. We'll zip to the next theme area, which is natural heritage systems and natural hazards. So in the natural heritage system, the current mapping does not include any linkages or connections between the various natural features, which represents the only major policy gap within the municipality system. West Elgin's natural heritage system mapping is based on the county's official plan mapping. And we understand that the county is going through updates, and we will update and reflect in the new official plan accordingly. We see opportunities there to introduce trails and open space on its own schedule to be identified for future transportation linkages, that being active transportation and other low impact linkages. Additionally, the provincial and county policies currently emphasize the need for protection of natural heritage features, and they also require that development be directed away from those hazardous lands within the natural heritage system. On natural hazards, there's the opportunity to provide more detailed mapping and specific policy guidance attached to that for the various natural hazards. And this might be useful to be illustrated in a map or an overlay on an existing schedule. And there's opportunities to strengthen the shoreline development policies along Lake Erie, and the policies related to climate change, and including more direction on those that might help with reducing the risk associated with natural hazards and that interface of development. Go to the next slide here of environmental conservation and source water protection. So there's opportunity to add policy support to energy conservation that's in alignment with and takes direction from the PPS. And there's also opportunity to align the source water protection policies and those within the Regional Source Water Protection Plan that came into effect in December 2015. And for the new official plan to implement applicable policies in relation to that source water protection plan, so that all the documents on this topic are aligned and speaking the same language. And our last two topic areas are climate change and housing. So the PPS requires that the OP include climate change policies, and there's a number of opportunities for these policies to come into play and for them to take shape. So these could look like focusing on growth in established settlement areas and promoting compact, complete mixed-use communities. It could also look like promotion of green infrastructure, such as grassy swales or rain gardens to promote infiltration. It could also be in the form of permeable pavement, green roofs, rock cuts, catch basins, and a number of other green infrastructure items that we can go through in detail if there's any questions on those. It can also look like the promotion of energy efficient building designs, protecting the agricultural land base, protecting and restoring natural areas and water systems while increasing the tree canopy coverage, and promoting active transportation networks. And for our last theme area of housing, we see opportunity for the new official plan to implement and identify targets for affordable housing as directed by the county. And we also see that it should consider other recommendations respecting affordable housing and other tools that could be applied to address this area of affordable housing. And I think that's our last one, and we go into the discussion. So I'll give it back to Kelly, and thank you for everyone's time.
Thank you so much, Zoe. With that forming the basis of the background report and the information out to you today, what we are now hoping to do is have a bit more of a discussion with you to help us chart the path forward in terms of setting goals and objectives and policy directions for the new official plan. And before I open up the floor to discussion, I did want to highlight what the existing vision is in the existing official plan. And that's up here on our screen right now today. And that vision is to create and maintain a strong, healthy, and sustainable rural community which capitalizes on our assets, fosters economic development, protects the environment, provides basic goods and services and facilities for the health, education, accommodation, recreation, and spiritual needs of the community. And there are several goals as well in the existing official plan, which are shown on this slide. Achieving a modest and steady increase in population growth, fostering economic development, maintain and improve essential community services, provide a diverse and affordable range of housing options, capitalize on the assets of the municipality, ensure logical, efficient, orderly, compact, and compatible development, maintain the agricultural character of the municipality, protect and enhance natural heritage features, build strong, healthy villages and hamlets, protect areas of aggregate resources, and work cooperatively with neighboring municipalities in matters related to land use infrastructure. So without further ado, what we do want to hear from you today is what you're hearing from your constituents, what your thoughts are on the existing vision and goals. Are they sufficient? Where should we direct our attention as we develop the new vision and goals for the OP? And I would as well want to know what the top 3 priority areas of focus should be for the new official plan from your perspective. I think this is the first time and certainly not the last time we will be coming to you, but we want to ensure we're moving forward with developing the official plan and the policy framework in a way that would meet the priority areas of focus for council. And so I will put myself on mute, and I'm happy to go back to slides as requested, but really we want to hear from you. So I'm muting now.
We need you to stop sharing the screen so we can see all of the council members.
Hey, who want to open this up under number 1? You want to know what I'm hearing from my community is that as indicated today, we have 800 potential building sites in West Elgin. I'm being told by employers that they cannot find employees to work in their facilities. The potential employees are telling them that they have no place to live. There is no housing available in West Elgin for them to live. So that would lead me to believe that what we've been doing in the past is not working. So I think that somehow or other, as we move through this new official plan, taking that into consideration, somewhere, somehow, we have to make some changes to make more housing in our community. And what that's going to be, I don't know. One of the things that, again, I have found after the many years of being around here is one of the largest difficulties that we faced in West Elgin is simply our location. We're far enough away from the center areas of St. Thomas and London that some of the pressures that we face down here, because of the fact that it's distance, the pressures that we face here are much different than the pressures that Southwold are facing right now, because they are under a fair bit of development pressure, because people are they're developing lands there and they're building houses there, and that creates a whole host of new problems. Unfortunately, we've not faced that situation in West Elgin as of yet. Hopefully it's coming. It seems to be moving farther west. I know that Dutton Dunwich is recently, in the last number of years, increased the amount of development that's happening within their community. Certainly a good thing for them. But again, that has not transferred itself out as far as West Elgin. And again, back to the situation that we've had potential development land subdivisions that have had plan of subdivision on them for years and years and years and have never been developed. So again, from as mayor of the municipality of West Elgin, people are coming to me saying we need more housing, we need more people living here, we need more jobs. It all comes as a package, but up until this point, it's been very difficult to do that. And in certainly in previous official plans, we have said a lot of the good words and the nice words and the lofty ideals, but it hasn't transferred into actually increasing our population, increasing our housing, increasing our manufacturing, increasing our businesses here. So I think we have the opportunity going forward here to certainly take a serious look at what we're doing. And yes, I know that a lot of the overseeing bodies, the provincial policy statements and the county's official plan, and a lot of those things, yes, there's certainly guidelines, but I think that we really as a municipality have to work long and hard at trying to make this official plan work for West Elgin like it has not worked for us in the past. That's my soapbox and I'm off it.
I'll just provide a quick comment in response to this excellent clarity in terms of what you've provided to make it very clear that having a new, more robust housing strategy in place is a top priority for the municipality. So this is exactly the kind of feedback we need to hear, because there's lots of ways to tackle it depending on how aggressive a municipality wants to be in attracting housing developments. It's very helpful to have that feedback early on for us to consider.
Through the chair. What I'm hearing is a mix of housing. So you've already touched on that, but what I'm mostly hearing is people are asking as their children aren't able to afford a home or someone is looking to be on their property, they're hearing the word tiny homes a lot, or extensions on their homes on their properties. So that's something I'm hearing from my constituents a lot. Cultural, I'm hearing from the Indigenous people in our community that like something a little more cultural in our area. And then the non-Indigenous are saying the same. It'd be nice if we had something. Unfortunately, our one area in the corner here in West Lorne, where they did the baking and I can't remember the Arts and Cookery Bank was something that came. And then I know out at in Eagle, they were having a few cultural events and such. And so they're looking for something more like that in the area. I've been hearing rec land. I see a lot of rec land. I think our rec lands, they're doing a great job updating our tennis courts and Miller Park and the Rodney Park. And there's lots of trails and things. So I'm not quite sure why no one's giving me exact examples of what more they want. They just want to see that maintained and updated. And then the three that you're looking for, so it would be the housing and the mix of housing. the steady growth of commercial. Not sure how we achieve that. So maintaining our facilities / updating them. Once again, they're, something you need to do constantly, put in the budget and keep going forward, but also look at it at this aspect when we're doing this OP plan to maintain and also bring in new people in the area. That encompasses everything in this plan to get us going. So those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, through the chair. In our last official plan, there was a statement that we supported renewable energy projects, both wind and solar and biogas. And my constituents tell me that that needs to change. We are fortunate in the PPS this time around did leave some space for municipalities to have more control over that, whereas there wasn't in the past. And so I would like to see a clear statement as to the fact that we do not support industrial wind energy projects in this municipality. That's not to say that when we get to agricultural diversified uses, that a wind turbine can't be used for on-farm use, or solar for that matter. And we do support solar projects here in this municipality, so that is not an issue. But wind projects is not supported in this municipality. And if you're looking for some examples, our neighbor in Dutton Dunwich just revised their official plan and made it very clear that wind turbine projects were not supported there. And then assuming that that may or may not be appealed at some point, listed quite a long, lengthy process by which a wind turbine project would have to meet those requirements if it was appealed, up to and including a 2,000 meter setback from residential areas. And so I too would like to see wording like that in our official plan. And I know a lot of people that agree with me on that, and some that don't, of course, but I think the majority of my constituents do. And there has been some history in the municipality in terms of public feedback on this issue. So I think it's pretty clear what we have heard.
Any other comments? Certainly, I think, Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one, and it was touched on earlier. And that's, I think our main thing is affordable housing. You know, it encourages people to stay. It encourages people to come. It encourages jobs. It will also encourage commercial people to come in and start their factories up because they know they can get manpower. When you look at the lakeshore, it's not hardly going to bring one worker into the population because you know very well that they're going to be retired people that just like the scenery, and they're going to take those houses up, and a lot of workmen won't be able to afford them anyway. So, and then we got the huge problem is if we do put a good size housing site up, we've got sewerage works that have to be, they should go onto a proper main sewerage. And you know that our sewerage, really West Lawn and Rodney, doesn't spread far enough out to the edges of the towns. So there's a huge expense that we haven't even looked at yet to get this affordable housing to come into the area.
Anything else?
No, that's it for now.
And I think another thing that we've maybe overlooked, and certainly the consultants working through this OP is, you know, it is 2021, and we have areas in this municipality that do not have potable water. We're right on the edge of a very good water distribution system, but again, there are areas that don't have adequate water, or the water that they have is unfit to drink, and unfortunate that as mayor of the municipality is certainly a burden that I feel personally that we have a municipality that needs to focus on water issues along with a whole lot of other things, unfortunately, and so it's something that I think in the official plan should be mentioned, that that is something that is very important that we need to work for. And I got to turn it over to yes, Bunny.
Yes, another thing that I wondered if we should be addressing in the official plan. I read that as you described the various housing options that were available to people, that work from home housing was included in that mix. And, you know, that is certainly possible in a good portion, a reasonable portion of our municipalities, certainly in the village areas, but because of lack of internet, it isn't possible in many others. So is that something that we should address in our official plan, or is that out of the scope of the official plan? And I also was curious as to whether we met our, I think that's 20% that of our housing that needs to be low or moderate income, and do we meet that right now?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'll just put a quick response. Brian, please chime in if I think if you have anything to add on this. Generally, with respect to sort of the infrastructure services or those sort of what we call utilities, the official plan provides direction for those services in a very indirect way. Those utilities are usually provided where the development is located, and it's difficult to influence it through policy. It doesn't certainly prevent us from having a policy, putting it on the table as an aspiration, but it requires like other vehicles to engage with utility providers to see what their plans are and whether they're willing to do it. But so it can provide a starting point, I guess, is what I would say about that. And then with respect to affordable housing, that is certainly a data gap we can close between now and the next time we talk, and have a look and see how well we're doing against that target. That's something that's measurable and capable of looking at.
Thank you. And the other concern that I have heard discussed is the compatibility of cannabis production and processing with neighbors. And so that would be something that I'd like to have some discussion on, whether there's opportunities for us to make it clear what setbacks are, and, you know, lighting and smell and so forth. And also we don't, I guess it's probably decided in a bylaw, Brian, but we don't have any clear direction on cannabis sales in our municipality. And we did have some discussion about that in council and discussed that, you know, there were certain areas where cannabis sales would not be allowed, but I'm not sure where we're at with those steps and whether they are part of an official plan or no.
I can speak at a high level through the chair to cannabis production and processing, and that is certainly something we can look at as part of the official plan. We know that a number of other municipalities have brought forward frameworks since cannabis production and processing has been made legal for both recreational and medical use. And there are certainly a number of approaches, and we could incorporate a policy framework that would be suitable for the West Elgin context on the production and processing side. In terms of sales, that is not where I have an area of expertise, but we could look into policy frameworks for that, but I would leave it to Patty or Brian to provide further comment on that aspect.
I would just say, Kelly, very quickly, the cannabis sales, the retail sales is probably best dealt with through a bylaw. I mean, it might take us another 9-10 months before we get to the end of the final piece. So you'd have something at a later date, perhaps, but you'd still ultimately need to implement it through a bylaw and through your zoning. So that would be my understanding.
Thank you.
We have a bylaw from 2019 that deals with cannabis cultivation and but doesn't include the retail sales. So we have a definition of all of that in our zoning bylaw and where it can be located. All of that is the retail sales. We opted in order to council. You guys chose to opt in because of that. So it is in the zoning bylaw where like they have to be located only in certain areas, and I do believe there are some specific setbacks to schools and things like that.
Okay, I didn't think we had gotten.
Yeah, it can't be anywhere near. There's certain separations from schools, residential, institutional, open space. All of that was done in 2019.
Good enough. I didn't know whether the growth and processing should be part of our official plan in a specific way or not.
Okay, well, I just, official plans to me, I guess I can sum it all up is we sit around and we set goals, quite often lofty goals with great wording that goes along with them. Then once those are in place, then we set policies to obtain those goals in the end. And I'm just wondering, do we spend any time making sure that those policies are user friendly enough to those individuals that have the capital to get us to those end goals? Because if we're not including them in this overall picture, we can come up with all the lofty goals in the world, but the individuals that have the capital that are going to come in and invest in this community to make all the things happen that we want to happen, if we have set our goals without serious consideration of how we're going to make that happen, then what happens is what has happened in the past is, again, as I keep going back, we sit with vacant land that hasn't been looked at or developed or thought about for years and years. And so it's quite a circle of events that have to take place to make a municipality successful, and certainly sometimes thinking outside the box maybe is something that's very difficult to do, but it would be something that I certainly would like to look at things through a different lens, a different paradigm, and knowing the fact that we do and are restricted by our location outside the circle of the Londons, the Chathams, and thankfully way outside the circle of the GTA. I think that we have to create our own microcosm here that's maybe quite unique to West Elgin, but it's something that works within the policy framework, but it's something that's creative enough that it hopefully will move us far forward faster and better than maybe it has in the past.
Through Mr. Chair, maybe a follow-up question just for interpretation to make sure we understand what we're hearing here. Like how, if in the past the approach has been to have really, up-to-date policies and have land in the settlement areas to attract growth, and then I guess wait and see if development is interested. That would be sort of a very passive way to attract housing. And certainly there's other moves to make, you know, can provide incentives on the form of development charges, how you do your DCs. You can take on some extra risk in terms of pre-servicing land. You can certainly, if there's a perception that there's too much red tape, you can try your best to streamline your planning policies to make sure they're just bare bones. You can increase the supply of options. Of course, you can have more land designated on the basis that there's hopefully more choice leads to more attraction. And on top of that, you know, you can do things that are outside of policy that are on the economic development side in terms of, you know, basically being trying to bring developers into the community to build the housing that you need, and trying to basically sell them on the opportunities here. Having an understanding of what the municipality's appetite is for attraction would influence how we would write the policies to some extent. So it's maybe food for thought about how far do we want to go to try and ensure we get the housing is something that maybe that takes shape through the OP process, but it's a question that I have on my mind, I suppose.
Again, I don't know when the last time any of you had the opportunity to tour what is on the ground in West Elgin as it sits right now. Over the past number of many years, we have had what I call small ball development, where housing is built on, you know, some of the Ontario County roads that have water on them, certainly a developed road. I know we've been to some Ontario Municipal Board hearings regarding that type of development in West Elgin. Certainly it was not viewed by the province of Ontario as the right way to go ahead, and certainly we went through some municipal board hearings. They agreed with our development, and even though it might not be right, certainly we do have a good number of very, very beautiful homes, certainly increased assessment for the municipality that we desperately need. And it was maybe not, as the people in Toronto think, the best development that there was. It was the development that we could get. Because it wasn't on a large scale. There wasn't a large risk to a developer. They were homes that were built, you know, in lots of 3 or 4 or 5, something of that level, and they were sold. So I'm thinking maybe the climate has changed somewhat, that the potential of having a larger subdivision type development being built is maybe in the realms of possibility now. But again, you know, when you take a look at our smaller hamlet areas of Port Glasgow and Eagle, you know, there's small agricultural areas that are currently being farmed outside of those communities. Being a farmer myself, I know that the size of the farm machinery anymore, farmers are not interested in those little 3-acre, 4-acre fields. It's just more work to get a big machine in there, get it ready to harvest or plant, then move on to another field. It's not very productive. So I think that we need to be really looking at those small parcels of agricultural land around our small settlement areas, and see if that is an area where we can again, you know, gather up some new residential homes. And I know they're not on full services, but they do have municipal water, and I know that there's discussions going on at the county right now. I believe there's been a subdivision approved in Bayham Township that is not on full services. So it's something that, you know, we're going to have to have a good look at it ourselves. And again, getting back to what I said before, sometimes in West Elgin, because of our location, we have to do things a little bit different to get development at all. We kind of got to do it our own way. So certainly look forward to having many more discussions with your consulting group going into the future. And I know council is very committed of having the opportunity to do this. Let's do it right. Let's try to do it better than it's ever been done before. And that's certainly a legacy that this group can leave going forward into 2046, that, you know, we looked at things and called them how we thought it should happen, and hopefully it'll all work out for us.
Thank you for those comments. It was very helpful, as I said. Challenge accepted.
Yes, the challenge is out there. Anybody else got any final, I think you guys are done your presentation?
Yes, I, through you, would say that I would like 5 minutes to wrap up on next steps, but if there are any further comments from council as we move forward, I would welcome those. But if there's nothing further, I can continue on.
Well, I think we're all under the we're not under any misconception that when you say next steps, anytime I've been involved with the municipal or with a official plan review, yeah, you take the first step and then you take the next step and then the next step and the next step, and you're pretty tired by the time that you get to finalizing the OP. Now, just in your research, the last time that this OP done, it was authorized by the province, by Municipal Affairs. That was before the county took over the responsibility for reviewing the lower tier municipalities' official plan, correct?
That's correct. It's because the county didn't have an official plan at the time. So Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is the approval authority until such time there is a county OP in place. Yeah. So now that the county OP is in place, the approval authority lies at County of Elgin. Yeah,
certainly that streamlines things up from what it was in the past. So maybe there won't be quite as many steps. And again, you know, we will have public consultations on that. So there will probably be a lot of things that will come forward that we've not thought of. But I guess we've all satisfied our initial questions. And I will save my thanks till you're finished, and you go ahead and give us what the rest of the next steps are going to be.
Well, I mean, I think you did a very good job of discussing the process and the next step and the next step and the next step. So you've made it very easy for me. But what I will say is we are in the early stages of this journey, and in order to best align the development of the new OP with the work ongoing at the county, there will be some key touch points we'll need to make with county staff, as well as other stakeholders, residents, and yourself between now and this time next year, when we hope to bring forward the final draft of the new OP to you. In the more immediate next steps, what we're going to do is take the information we've received from you today and use that as input into a policy directions memo. That will also be informed by some online engagement, which we will be doing later this month and early next month. And the next time you see us will be to present this policy directions memo, where we will provide you with the vision, goals, and objectives for the new OP, as well as some more robust policy directions than we talked about today. Today was really high level. We will meet with the Staff Technical Advisory Committee in December, finalize those policy directions, and come back to you in January of 2022. And following your receipt and endorsement of the policy directions and the vision, goals, and objectives, we will begin work on the draft official plan in February 2022. I think that does it for me in terms of next steps, but I would pass it over to Patty, Eric, and Brian on anything that I may have missed or any other concluding thoughts.
Just one question there. Acronyms. What is a TCA again?
Oh, the TAC that's the Technical Advisory Committee. It is comprised of members of staff, including Mr. Pierce, as well as the clerk and the CAO, and representatives from building and engineering.
Okay. See, I didn't know, I didn't catch that all in a TAC. Okay. You were passing it on to one of your colleagues. That's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, Brian, I don't know, maybe I'll leave you with the last word on this. That would be fine.
Yeah, other than that, we'll be working harmoniously with the project team or consulting team to progress this project forward. Understanding where the county is in their official plan review process and all the discussion papers that they're releasing currently. I know they're currently looking at having an open house for natural heritage coming up. So, and their work plan is looking for late winter, spring approval type timelines for the county OP process. So the thought process and the project schedule is integrating that into our work plan so that draft policies that are created at the county level can be incorporated into the local official plan at West Elgin to implement that hierarchy that Kelly mentioned at the beginning stages of the process of the hierarchy of the planning documents, so that it conforms with our West Elgin official plan to take on those new policies created at the county should they be implemented into it. So that's our thought processes. And I thank Committee of the Whole and members of our council here for their thought processes and information sharing today, as this goes a long way in helping shape the new official plan. So I think it's a great first step, and lots more steps to come, of course, based on where we are today. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Well, thank you, Brian. Again, I think fairly productive first go around. I'm very, very proud of this council. They're very engaged with their community, and certainly they bring things to the table, and we're a cohesive bunch that seems to work very, very well together. So I'm looking at this overall OP process to be fairly seamless and productive. Certainly to our consultants, thank you for the work that you do on this. I would open up an offer to any one of you that would ever feel the need or like to take the opportunity to visit West Elgin. I would be more than happy to give you a guided tour of all the things that you're seeing from maps and satellite or wherever you pick this information up. So if any time that you would like to take advantage of that, certainly make arrangements through Brian or Magda, and we'll make that happen. Well, I guess we're all done, aren't we? Okay, with that, I do have a recommendation that West Elgin West Elgin Committee of the Whole hereby adjourns at
4:56 p.m.
To meet again at the call of the chair. Mover and seconder for that recommendation, please. Moved by Leatham, seconded by Tellier. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.